Good morning. Very good. You all had coffee this morning? Wow, I like that. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Burmeister.
And I am Rodrigo Silva.
And on behalf of the United States Spiritist Federation, it is our great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th U.S. Spiritist Symposium. So excited that you're all here. This special gathering has been made possible thanks to the support of 40 Spiritist organizations, the dedication of volunteers from across the country, and especially the commitment of the volunteers from Michigan's Spiritist centers. We are thrilled to host this annual event in the vibrant city of Ann Arbor, well known for its prestigious university, rich cultural diversity, dynamic arts community, and beautiful green spaces.
Thanks, Claudia. Good morning, everyone. Let's extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us live, whether if you are watching on the USSF Facebook page, the USSF YouTube channel, or the International Spirit Council YouTube channel. We encourage all participants to submit their questions online. You find a QR code displayed on your screen, and for those attending in person, the code is also visible on the banner shown on the big screen. If you prefer to submit your question the traditional way, feel free to write it down and hand your piece of paper to one of the volunteers at the check-in desk. There will be 2 dedicated Q&A sessions throughout the day, so stay tuned and stay engaged.
You also have the opportunity to mingle with many people, including representatives from the Spiritist centers in Michigan and other states. And if you're interested in learning more about these centers, or if you feel the need for a private fraternal conversation anytime during the event, please don't hesitate to ask the volunteers at the welcome desk to help you.
A special highlight of this symposium is that it's designed for the entire family. Just across the hall, children and teens are enjoying a full day of activities centered on the theme, Shining Our Inner Light, Learning, Love, Kindness, and Gratitude. A quick reminder for parents, please pick up your kids and teens before lunch and make sure they return to their classroom afterwards in time for both them and you to continue the program smoothly, and we'll let you know when it's time.
We know many of us love to read. We are excited to share some big news. The United States Spiritist Federation has just released the 1865 and 1866 editions of the Spiritist Review by Allan Kardec. The 12-year collection is nearly complete. How exciting! As a special treat for the symposium, all books sold by the USSF will be offered with a 25% discount. And now, available for purchase online, some more important releases that we have. Leal Publisher is announcing 4 books psychographed by the medium Divaldo Franco and a book within the Manuel Filomeno de Miranda project. And the Spiritist Federation of Florida released the book 4 Short Words by Leon Denis. During the breaks, make sure to explore the great selection of books that we have here today.
As we prepare to begin our program, we kindly ask everyone to take a moment to silence your cell phone or turn off if you prefer. And at this time, I'd like to invite Marcelo Neto from the Spiritist Federation of Florida to lead us in this opening prayer, helping us begin our day attuned with the mentors that actually they are the really organizer of this special event. Welcome, Marcelo.
Good morning, everyone. Let us all pray. Dear Father above, beloved Master Jesus, we are here gathering in your name with the intention to spread your gospel once more. It's been quite some time, centuries ago, when we heard your voice, inviting each and every one of us to be an instrument of your immense peace. We gather, forming churches, temples, but the gospel was simply being spread with our lips empty and devoid of emotions, very afar from the divine proposition that the divine love has offered to us since the beginning of times. Now, again, in this beautiful land of United States of America, we are gathering again, illuminated by the Spiritist teachings, proclaiming a new era, the era of peace, the era of love, the era of Christ. Help us at this time to be different, not only proclaiming your name and your gospel with the baggage of the intellectual contents that we all still have, but very far away from the emotions that we need to be here with us. Bring us back to that Sermon of the Mountain where blessed are the humble, so they will find the kingdom of heaven within. Bless our back to that speech that transformed the whole face of the earth, inviting us to be the pure in heart, so one day we shall see God. Bless us to be merciful, because during the course of centuries, mercy has been devoided from so many of us. Help us this time to be different. We know it's not going to be easy, but we know that once you said you can do way much more, inviting us to the real transformation within. Lord, make us all an instrument of your peace. There's hatred in this world full of hatred. Help us to be the one that so love. Where there's darkness, light. Where there's despair, hope. Where there is so many miseries out there and inside of each of every one of our hearts. Let us to fight the good fight and to initiate something different. The age of Christ, the era of the gospel in this beautiful land of United States of America. Thank you so much to allowing us to be gathering in your name once more in this beautiful state of mission. Thank you so much. and so be it.
Thank you, Marcelo, for inspiring us as we open this event, where we will reflect on the evolution of consciousness, a path towards enlightenment. Today, we gather at a time when the world faces profound social, environmental, and spiritual challenges, and when many are seeking healing, guidance, and meaningful connection. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Yuri Castro, who will open the symposium with a talk entitled The Awakening of Consciousness. Yuri Castro holds a doctoral degree in clinical psychology and specializes in the treatment of severe mental illnesses in both adolescents and adults. Since 2012, he has also been active as a Spiritist speaker. Yuri is a volunteer at the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami, Florida, and currently he serves as the marketing director of the United States Spiritist Federation. Yuri also has a Spiritist podcast called Spiritist Companion. We would like to welcome Yuri Castro.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 19th Symposium of the USSF. They gave me the big responsibility of being the first one to come up here and talk to you guys to set the tone for the other speakers and for the conference as a whole. The good thing is that nobody can say I copied anybody else's work because I said it first. Joking aside, it's such a pleasure and such an honor and a joy to be able to be gathered here today, seeing so many faces and the smiles. And I just want us to rejoice in this banquet of light in the form of words, in the form of looks, form of handshakes, hugs, that we're all already receiving and will continue to receive throughout the day. As we talk about a topic that is so important in our lives nowadays, the evolution of consciousness, particularly my talk, The Awakening of Consciousness. I would like us to go back and try to imagine these questions or try to hear these questions that have been echoing for so long in our lives and in our heads. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? Who are we? These are questions that have long been in our minds, and by long I mean in other lives as well. And as humanity is growing and is evolving, consciousness follows that path as well. Evolving with humanity, evolving to understand who we are, what we're doing here, and the purpose of life. Nowadays, as it was said already, we live in a world that all we have to do is go outside or open the news and we're going to see turmoil. We're going to see violence. We're going to see war. We're going to see divisiveness. We're going to see all these things that are afflictions, both individual and collective. And we may question ourselves, what's happening? Is this part of a plan? Because it doesn't look good. But thankfully, we have Spiritism that came to us in the 19th century with Allan Kardec codifying the words of the spirits, of the higher spirits in the book, the Spirits book, which inaugurated the Spiritist movement in 1857. And with that came the promised consoler. With that came the promised consoler that Jesus had mentioned. With that came the answers that not only consoled, but were also rational to the questions that have been with us for a while. Consciousness in itself is the compass that will help us in this journey, that has already helped us in this journey as we evolve, as we try to understand why we're here, who we are, and the purpose of life. As we look around and we see, like I said, turmoil, war, violence, moral confusion, as we see all these things, it will, and it already helps us make sense of these things that before we didn't have an answer, or the answer, we couldn't necessarily hear it because the answer was already said 2,000 years ago. The real answer was already said a while back. But the history of humanity shows us that this process is definitely not a simple process. This process of the evolution of consciousness, and I love that we don't have that image here, but behind the QR code, I love that we have a staircase when we're talking about the evolution of consciousness, and that's what it is. Step by step, going up, progressing. Because the law of progress with capital L is the law of God, and we can delay it or we can speed it up, but we cannot stop it. It's happening. It will continue to happen. But it's step by step, as the staircase that we have right there. Going back to perhaps more ancient times, or even if we go to the teachings in the Gospel according to Spiritism, another book by Allan Kardec from 1864, we will see that before, when the spirit was created, stop working. Then you guys like to make my microphone not work. Can you guys hear me? I'm going to continue like this. While we, okay. No problem. Thank you. Testing. Oh, there we go. All right. So as I was saying, if you go back to the history and if you go back, according to Spiritism, we're going to learn that the spirit was created simple and ignorant. This is also in the Spirit's book, the other one that I mentioned, questions 100. There's different answers that have that. So answers to question 155, 133, and other questions will tell us that as spirits, as immortal spirits, we were created simple and ignorant. So with simplicity and ignorance, these are two qualities that they say. And they repeat that over and over and over. So if we look and we say, okay, we were created simple and ignorant with these two qualities, then how do we progress? How do we evolve? How does that process happen? At first, we learn we're moved by instincts, by sensations as humans. So we tried all the way thousands and thousands of years ago to find shelter, to find food, to fend off enemies. Those are our concerns. But as we slowly progressed, and I say we as spirits, as immortal spirits, we slowly progressed. We started to see other things. We started to look to the skies, look at the stars, and started to think there must be something bigger than us. There must be something greater than us. And we started to develop different names for different gods, the fire, the wind, all these natural elements. They became part of a divinity, part of the divine, because our consciousness was still in a state of infancy. So it could not comprehend God. So we started to name different things and say, this is the God for this, God for that, which already denoted this view that there was something greater. And there is. But we continue to progress, and as slowly but surely intelligence started to develop as well. And with intelligence came philosophy, came science. We started to become better in agriculture. We started to improve in all those areas of our lives. And we started to also improve in the notion of God, singular now, one God, one intelligent being that created us, our Father in heaven. So we progress through that, and intelligence continues to progress. With it, perhaps laying behind, is moral progress as well, moral consciousness, this moral awareness of God. And in the Spirit's book, question 621, they're going to say, where are the laws of God written? In the conscience. And I think it's one of the staple questions, one of my favorite questions and answers in the Spirit's book. In the conscience. Therefore, the awakening of consciousness and the evolution of consciousness by extent is something that is already within us. Consciousness as this moral compass is already within us because the laws of God of what's right and wrong, they are written in us. And I love that because it means that each one of us has access to that. Each single one of us has access to those laws. We've always had. But the thing is, in an infancy or in an infant state of the Spirit, we didn't have that comprehension. We couldn't comprehend. We couldn't apply. Now we're starting to comprehend more and more. And the application, therefore, becomes the next challenge. And that's where the moral progress is going to come. But consciousness, and I wanted to bring two definitions of consciousness, especially because this is the part of the whole symposium today. The Oxford Dictionary says that it's an internal knowledge or conviction, the state or fact of being mentally conscious or aware of something. And this other dictionary, the Merriam-Webster, is going to say the quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. This is devoid of any religious connotation. Being aware of something within oneself, and it's going to say the state or fact of being conscious of an external object, state, or fact. So even something like the English language, we look at the dictionary, semantics, we see that it's already pointing to something that's within ourselves. And that is the compass, that is the north that I want us all to have in mind. That consciousness, according to Spiritist perspective, perhaps we can say that is this inner perception of self and the divine law. Of looking in our conscience and knowing what is right, what is wrong, and following that. Because a lot of the times we do know what's right and wrong, but it's actually doing what's right that's hard. But as we evolve as spirits, we learn, of course, that the awakening of consciousness, it's something that doesn't happen like that. I mentioned the staircase in the image. It happens gradually, step by step, slowly, but surely. And this awakening also happens on an individual level and on a collective level. Because even though we're all here, and I like to say on the same boat called Earth, we're all in the same boat. We have come here with unique trajectories. Each spirit is unique. So we came here, and we are here right now, the incarnate one and the discarnate ones, with our own set of credits and debts. We are here with our own qualities and defects, helping each other, helping ourselves. Individually, when there's the awakening of the consciousness, it means that we are more aligned with the laws of God. We're more aligned with doing what's right. Because for so many years, so many centuries, for so many millennia, I dare say, we here, 2025, I dare say that we probably didn't do what was right. I risk saying that without offending anyone. Because we're still here talking about Jesus. We're still here trying to understand, internalize, introject all his teachings and apply them. Because that's so hard. That bridge between knowledge and application is very, very hard. Individually, we awaken at different times as well. If we look back into the history of humankind, we see so many martyrs, so many saints. We see people that walked with Jesus, heard him for years, but didn't have that full awakening. Whereas we have somebody like Paul of Tarsus before Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus and the awakening that he had. We have Mary, who was living a life of sin and of material pleasures, awaken her consciousness, understanding what the laws of God were and applying that in her life. Collectively, we awaken through the individual pieces of the puzzle, through the individual awakenings. And the image I want you to have is of this street, let's say the city, that's engulfed in darkness. And we go to a specific street. and we look at one lamppost, that one lamppost all of a sudden illuminates, becomes light. It's going to illuminate the street a little bit, all those around. Slowly but surely, the lampposts start to all illuminate themselves, and we have a bright street. The street next to that does the same thing, over and over and over. And we have a city that is fully illuminated. That is the image that I have when I think of illuminating our inner temple, our inner sanctuary, doing what's right according to the awakening of our consciousness on an individual level that will also have its projection on a collective level. And then we can all become these lampposts that illuminate the way. These lighthouses that illuminate treacherous waters. We can all become that. But there are instruments to this awakening, because it's not easy to awaken the consciousness. We are here 2025, still going through that process, which is okay because we're all evolving. But it's not easy, and there are many instruments to this awakening. Afflictions and sufferings perhaps being the bitter medicine to help us awake the consciousness. Like I said, we look outside. It was said here in the beginning as well. War, crisis, turmoil. And each one of us carry their own set of afflictions. Individuals. But these afflictions are the goads, which is a word that Spirit author Emmanuel, who wrote through Chico, likes to use. Goads as in G-O-A-D-S, which is this pointy object used in agriculture to make the cattle go forward whenever the cattle stops its work. So the farmer pokes the cattle and the cattle continues to go. We have this suffering in our world as goads, both individually and collectively. Because oftentimes we have deviated from what's right. We have deviated from what our conscience was saying was what we must do. And now we must continue the progress. So the affliction, the suffering works as this goad, this poking instrument that propels us forward. The sickness, the afflictions, the suffering that we see, both individually and collectively as well. Reincarnation. We will talk about reincarnation too, so I don't want to steal Ligia's thunder. But reincarnation is also this process by which we are able to continue the awakening of our consciousness. By the process by which we come back here when we reincarnate with a list of things that we must do better. We talk about in Spiritist lectures, trials and expiations or atonements. Trials are these things, these challenges that the soul welcomes to work on the virtues, the true treasures, the virtues, the ones that are not going to be corroded. No thieves can steal the virtues: patience, charity, benevolence, indulgence, tolerance. We accept these trials and we reincarnate. We also have expiations. We also have atonements, which is the corrective path that we must take because we deviated from it. So the suffering a lot of the times is a form of expiation, but it can also be a form of trial that the spirit welcomes, so it must endure and it must improve. Because, like I said before, the law of progress with capital L is unstoppable. We may speed it up or we may delay it. But these instruments of awakening are all part of the love that our Creator has for us, that God has for us. His laws are written in our conscience. But the God that we talk about here is a God of love, a God that gives us the opportunity to repent. What did Jesus say in the Lord's Prayer? He talked about repentance, about forgiveness. So our God is a God that is infinitely just, fair, loving, kind, perfect in all its qualities. So if we look around and we see suffering, we see afflictions, we must have within us the certainty that everything has a purpose, and everything that seems out of order for our material eyes is actually within the divine order. As much as it looks like everything is lost, as much as sometimes we may feel hopeless, overwhelmed, we must have that faith within us, that everything is going according to divine justice. Because if God was unjust, even a little, if God made me have everything that I have, live where I live, and he made someone else live in famine in Africa or in a war in Middle East, what type of God is that? Where's the fairness in that? So he prefers some children over. No, that is incompatible, rationally speaking. For that, I recommend the book that completed 160 years this year, Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. And this topic of divine justice. And in that book, we can also see the awakening of consciousness, because there are testimonies of spirits in that book, Heaven and Hell, 1865, by Allan Kardec, where these spirits come after they discarnate, and they come to provide their testimonies and say all the things that they found out that they were wrong, but now that they know. And they come to help us progress. And then we can also think about what Marcelo was saying, the beautiful prayer in the beginning, about Jesus, the age of Jesus. Because as we see also in question 625 of the Spirit's book, when they ask, what is the perfect, is there a perfect type that God has ever sent humankind as a model and guide? One word, that's their answer, Jesus. He is the one who came all those years ago, taught all those things that we're still trying to apply today. He was the one who came and said, and this relates to awakening of consciousness, when he awoke our consciousness by saying, tooth by tooth, an eye for an eye, forget about that. We can do better. We should do better. And he started to do a list of things throughout all his ministry that only lasted 3 formal years, because he was already doing it before even he was younger. He was already teaching in his own way. But throughout only 3 years, he taught so many things. He was the model and our guide. He was the most, and it still is the most perfect spirit that has ever walked the planet, that has ever walked this earth. So we don't need to look too far to find our model and our guide. We don't need to look too far to see where and how we can awaken our consciousness, where and how we can look inside our own conscious and see what is good, what is bad, and what's the road to follow. He provided us that north in the compass. He provided us that. But question 919, again from the Spirit's book, talk about moral progress lagging behind intellectual progress. What is the obstacle to moral progress, they ask. And the spirits are going to say 2 words. They asked obstacle, and they're going to say 2 obstacles, and I love that piece. Selfishness and pride. The two scourges of our moral development. We joke, we call them the evil twins. Selfishness and pride, because those are the things that still stop us from truly awakening our consciousness, from following these laws of God, but it's part of the process. Slowly but surely, we try to get rid of selfishness and pride through afflictions, through suffering, through trials and atonements. We are slowly but surely getting rid of the evil twins. But it does take some time, because evolution is gradual. There are no leaps in nature. It was already said hundreds of years ago, and it's very much applicable. So knowing thyself, actually that's question 919. What is the best way to do this moral, to do this moral transformation? Know thyself. They say a sage of, like from ancient times already told you, know thyself. So knowing ourselves, why? Because when we look inward, when we have the courage to look inward, to know ourselves, we see what we must improve on. We see what we have perhaps carried with us as a heavy burden from previous lives, and we bring it to this life right here. So we must deal with that. We look around us, those who share the same roof with us, those are the people we must be with. And then we know ourselves, looking inward and doing the moral transformation that we must do. But again, this process is gradual. The awakening of consciousness following what we must follow is very much gradual, but it's something that we must do. We have been doing, but like I said, we can speed it up or we can delay it. So the question becomes, why delay it? It's not easy. It takes courage. It takes, again, looking inward and trying to fight selfishness and pride, which still drive us because we're still very much attached to matter. The more we evolve, the more it's going to be the spirit having more control over matter. But we're still in a planet and in a state where matter exerts a great influence. So having this awareness, having this notion while we are awakening our consciousness is pivotal in our transformation, in the moral transformation. So enlightenment, which is the state, like I said, we're all marching towards perfection as spirits, as immortal spirits. We will one day get there. As we're marching towards that, the state of enlightenment is the state we can think of where the spirit has already ridden itself from all the imperfections, all its impurities. It is depurated, it's purified, and is in complete harmony with the laws that govern the universe, complete harmony with God. And to finish here today, I wanted to read a small passage by the spirit author Joanna de Angelis, when she said, in your origin, you are light advancing toward the great light. There are only shadows because you have not yet set yourself to move the powerful generators of dormant energy within you. Bring forth clarity, beginning with the spark of goodwill and letting it grow until it reaches all the strength at your disposal. Love is your path, for it proceeds from God who created you. Jesus is our path and our model and our guide, the way, the truth, and the life, the one who showed love without selfishness, forgiveness without resentment, humility without weakness. So let us use Jesus as our guide, understanding that the awakening of our immortality, the awakening of the consciousness is the dawn of a new humanity, and each one of us has a part to play in that. May the peace of Christ be with us always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuri, for the inspiring talk. I love that part when you said we are allowed to go slowly on our awakening. So, but we cannot go slow here because we have a lot to go yet. So, building on those ideas, Spiritism teaches that reincarnation isn't simple about repeating life. It's a meaningful process that helps us grow morally and mentally, guiding us closer to becoming our best selves. With that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ligia Carvalho, who will bring the topic reincarnation as a path for growth. Ligia is the co-founder of the Spiritist, the Center Divine Light in New Jersey, where she serves as secretary and leads both the Spiritist Education Department and bookstore. She is also a frequent speaker across the country. Professionally, Ligia is a therapist, specializing in supporting youth facing behavior and mental health challenge. Welcome, Ligia.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the introduction, preparing the path. I'm not copying, I'm following the path. So our topic today is reincarnation as a path for growth. And one of the things that we think of and we look at is I'm pressing it. Oh, there you go. We'll get through it. There you go. When we think about reincarnation, the topic or the concept of reincarnation is not new. It is not something that came about or was invented or that was thought of with the upbringing of Spiritism. It is a concept that has been present throughout history. So if you look at history and the evolution of mankind, there's traces of the concept, some more crude, others more advanced, of reincarnation. But what is special about Spiritism is that it brings a deeper understanding. It brings a deeper layer, like it says in that part over there. It brings us the concept in a more rational, more compliant with the natural laws of progress that Yuri also talked about. Those laws are the laws of God. Those are the laws that govern our world, our planets, our inner and outer lives. So the difference is not that we believe or not in reincarnation, because believe it's safe to believe that most of us, if not all of us here presently, do believe in reincarnation. But it's more about our understanding of it. So today, I'm doing something a little more different. So instead of just going through a lecture, it's going to be sort of a study guide. So what I'm going to do is, because in order for us to understand these complex concepts, 25 minutes is nothing. I'm just going to pinpoint what they are, and it's going to sort of linger in your mind. So what I'm going to propose today is I'm going to put a lot of information on the board. We're not going to read all of it, but what it is I'm going to give you the sources and other additional studying resources so that when we leave here with our Spirit's book or Heaven and Hell, Genesis, all those beautiful literatures, we can go back home and study it. Because there's some provoking thoughts in the sense of really getting us to reflect and look things from a different paradigm. And that's what Spiritism brings, this aspect of thinking of things rationally. We all tend, and women get blamed more than men, of being very emotional. And it's true, because when something impacts our lives and our sense of inner consciousness, there's an emotional reaction that comes from it, because we are still evolving. But here, we're going to try to look from the prism of rationality and the concepts that Spiritism brings to us. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of information. We're not going to read through it, but it's more a reflection or a guide for you guys to further study. So in question 166, basically, it brings to us this concept that we already understand. Reincarnation is a process of living multiple lives in the sense that the same spirit inhabits different bodies. When we're talking about consciousness, that consciousness remains intact in the sense that it is not a new birth for the spirit. It's just a new opportunity for learning. So in the process of reincarnation, the new existence and all right, I'll get there. Is there a different area that I need to point to? All right. So the purpose in these process of having multiple lives is atonement and the progressive better of human kind. So it is a means by which we evolve in following the theme of consciousness by means of really aligning ourselves with the divine law and learning our purpose as eternal beings. This is the moment where through these experiences, we can either, there we go, we can follow and learn what is God's justice, his revelation, and really follow the means of evolving our perfection. This is where through all these multiple lives, God in his mercifulness gives us the opportunity to finish things that were left undone, but most importantly, to make corrections. Is there anybody here that never made a mistake? Is there anyone here that maybe you don't regret it, but you say, if I could go back, I would do it differently? That is the beauty of reincarnation. And therefore, if we're going back to learn to do it better, to finish things that were incomplete, and most importantly, to correct mistakes, it is only natural that not all experiences are going to be pleasurable and fun. Some of them may be challenging. Like Yuri said, trials, expiations, sometimes the bitter medicine of suffering, quoting him now. And that's the process by which we continue to evolve and develop this consciousness. Through the plurality of existence, we learn that it's a necessity for one's progress. And it's one of the most important laws reviewed by Spiritism because of what? It reinforces the law of progress. And as you guys can see, you can all look the references, the books, the chapters. You can go back home and study it, right? So as we evolve, we think about in what aspect, under what circumstances, what exactly do we need to develop? And here in this part of the heaven and hell, they teach us there's really two concepts that we have to focus on: the progress of our intellect and the progress of our morality. When we think about the evolution of the spirit, we think like a bird with two wings. Without one wing, that bird cannot take flight. Meaning, if we don't develop our inner ability to think intellectually, but also to feel morally, it's like a bird without a wing that cannot make that flight towards the divine, towards the alignment that we're talking about in the concept of the study today. So it is important that we focus on both of them. And it's interesting that the more intellectually evolved doesn't mean that morality follows behind. We see throughout history men and women that were extremely intelligent, but they use their intelligence for very negative things. And who doesn't know people who are simple, humble, many times not formally educated, but they have a sense of love and caring and humanity in them. So those, they evolve differently. But the interesting things we see is earthly life, the challenges of everyday living, keeping your body healthy, working, rearing children, or dealing with parents, or even socioeconomical difficulties of our times, cultural issues, all make us develop our intellectuality, while our emotions are developed by the feeling of needing each other. So I know that sometimes when we're struggling in life, there's a wish or tendency to isolate, to avoid, to distance ourselves. But we see that the path for evolution is not by isolation or distancing. On the contrary, is about engaging, welcoming, connecting with human beings. This section here was also very touching for me, because look at that. Social life is a touchstone that reveals the good or bad quality of a spirit. Like has been mentioned in the introductions, in the prior lecture, we're living moments of many difficulties. It doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum. Everybody's struggling with lots of conflict. But the important thing is we're looking for our betterment. We are working towards our growth and improvements as eternal beings. These opportunities are opportunities for us to look at where we stand, not in relation to others, but in relation to ourselves. As things happen out there in the world, within my family, within my friends, within my Spiritist center, how do I feel inside? How does that reflect on my inner experience? And those are the things that are going to bring us what? The awakening that we're talking about. Do I feel bitter? Do I feel upset? Do I have a sense of rage and a desire for vengeance? Come on, I do. Or do I find kindness and compassion and patience within myself? So every situation in life, that is what it's going to do. It's going to bring about thoughts and emotions. And those are going to be your indicators. So look at that. If it were possible for humans to live alone, he or she would neither have vices nor virtues, because isolation may preserve from evil, but yet knows the possibility for goodness. And the only way for us to achieve that perfection, to move forward, to find a true place of peace, as per Jesus and the laws of divine that he helped us understand, is really by learning to live with one another, getting along. But it doesn't stop there, obviously. We see once again that progress achieved by our own labor, by the use of our free will, there's no free ticket. I don't say it's easy. Like I said, I stand here before you speaking of Spiritism and trying to live it. I don't live it all the time. I know what it goes on in the innermost sacred parts of my being, the thoughts and emotions that many times I have, the reactions. But that's the whole point of growing through reincarnation, the concept of consciousness, is becoming aware of it, so that instead of it ruling you, you engage and control these feelings and eventually transform it. The first step is to become aware so you can control it. And over time, through labor and effort, change it to something different and better as we learn through the examples of Jesus and the excellent examples that Yuri brought too, Paul of Tarsus, Mary Magdalena, and so many other pictures in people that we have learned that they made that change. So we see that in the process, the beauty of these multiplicity of lives is we don't lose anything. Once again, the spirit is the same, meaning the same individuality. We change every life because we acquire new knowledge, new aptitudes. The body may be different. So whatever we have achieved and earned, we keep it. Because one of the big criticisms with reincarnations, I don't remember who I was. So how can it be helpful? So I'm starting a new life from zero. No, we bring all that information with us. And that guides us. Ergo, what we said before. How do I respond intellectually? How do I respond emotionally when things happen to me? We don't need to know anything else. That's the key for our self-awareness and evolution. So by really understanding our aptitudes, and remember, we'll talk a little more about atonement in the future, but right now we're talking about everything that we acquire. It's within us. We are able to utilize it for good. So once again, if you go through these questions in the Spirit's book about repentance, it brings away, again, this concept of awakening. Awakening is not always easy. I struggle with accepting that I'm wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right all the time, but I'm not, and I know I'm not. So the concept of awakening to the fact that maybe I'm wrong and then realizing, yeah, I was wrong, it's painful. It's difficult. But it's the process by which we can change ourselves, not only make amends, but also move forth on the right path. And the beautiful thing is, God is so loving again that he tells us, you can awaken now, today. We're going to do more English, right, Marcelo? We can repent and awaken in the spiritual plane. It's never too late, but the sooner you do it, the better. If you repent now, you can start making amends now. But most times, we usually tend to have a better awakening in the spiritual plane. Why? Because in there, our consciousness sort of expands in the concept that we have more memory of past lives, past relationships, past interactions, and then we can see the context in a more amplified manner. And then what we want, I want to go back. Because, in the spiritual plane, we can have lessons and we can have classes and we can study the theory, but it's all in the body that we put it in practice. So yes, we all beg to come back, right? And once again, the key point here is repentance enough? No, we must act. And that's the main point of our reincarnation. We need to do. We can't just plan and desire. We got to get our hands dirty. Without it, there's no progress. And the interesting thing is, I know it's natural sometimes for us to question, why this in my life? Why that situation? Why this circumstances? But everything we do, we work within the context of free will and the law of cause and effect. Two important concepts of Spiritism and reincarnation that you can learn more by studying these references. But if there was no free will, how can we be responsible for the errors that we make? Or how can we earn the rights and the merits of the good that we did? Then God would be unjust. So really, in order for justice to be present, we need to be an active participant. We need to be part of this planning. And what we see, and this is from two books that they also have out there, Action and Reaction, and Between Heaven and Earth, is these quotes show us how our thoughts, our awareness, and most importantly, specifically, we use the word consciousness, how that concept of self that it gets more integrated and expanded, especially in the spiritual world, give us an idea of the shortcomings that we created or were responsible for or participated in. And remember the question before? We want to come back. We ask for it. Our consciousness impacts, see, the mind is in command, impacts and reflects in the planning of our body, our lives, and circumstances. So we think of it, how can I have free will? I didn't ask to, have this genetic condition. I didn't ask to be born in a family with these characteristics. The other one was rich, I was poor. We did. And that's the understanding of reincarnation from the perspective of Spiritism teaches us, is there's no fatalism. So today, yes, maybe today I'm in a position where I feel like I have no choice because there's some things are immutable. But those choices were made in the spiritual plane with our participation, with a group of loving spirits that cares for us, that wants the best for us, that we trust, that guided us. And although we said, oh, that's going to be tough, but you know what? I know I need that. And we plan when we are part of it. Nothing is made or simply just imposed. So we see when we look at, and today, like everybody mentioned, we're living very difficult times where there's a lot of differences of perspectives and opinions and beliefs about what's right or wrong. But in reality, we are reborn. And as a process of evolution, we're going to experience being poor or rich, being the lord of the beggar, being the master of the subordinate. There's so many different men and women, free and enslaved. These are all going to be experiences to teach us to develop a part of our intellectuality or a part of our morality that is going to make us spirits that are evolved. If reincarnation is founded upon a law of nature and the source is a universal brotherhood, is also based on the law of equality, social rights, and freedom. So all these disparities and differences that we see in the world, they're not punishment, but they are opportunities for growth. How can I overcome something? How can I make it better? And remember, if we are in a position that we identify as undesirable or inferior, we were part of the decision. And on the same token, if we are in a position where we are in a state where we say it's advantageous, how can I continue to work to deserve it? And how can I use it for the betterment of humanity and myself? So, reincarnation explains all these anomalies which we see in life, which really are just learning opportunities with the ultimate goal that we all have, which is to become perfect beings. God is not unjust. And in these two questions, we studied a little more about it, where he says, is the sense of justice natural or is it a product of acquired ideas? They reply, it is so natural that you immediately appalled by any idea of injustice. But it goes a little further and says that God has placed in the heart of our human beings this intuition of what's right and wrong. And here they use the word God, but in essence, like Yuri said, the laws of God are engraved in our consciousness. And that's where we go back to reflect on how can I improve? How can I follow the correct path? But it's interesting. We're not even going to bring any, divisive topic here. But if you think of any, there's always a back and forth. There's always differences of opinion. And look what it says about sense of justice. If justice is a law of nature, why do people understand it so differently? How can the same thing be just to one person, yet unjust to another? It is because of your passions, often mingle with the sentiment and corrupt, as they do with most natural sentiments, causing you to see things from a false point of view. It goes back to, in the process of evolution, we are still like children. Children, they don't understand. They think they do. Talk to any teenager. They think they know it all, right? But they have not matured. We have not matured. So in the uncertainty of, am I wrong or am I right? It is not about fighting for what I believe. It's about fighting for how I can become a better person, how I can improve myself and those around me. So we see that justice, as defined here, is, click the wrong button, is the respect for the rights of each other. However, in here, I find the phrase here, the rights, because it's not over there. The rights established by humans are not always complying with justice. Doesn't it complicate things? I want to follow, the natural laws, and I want to be a good abiding citizen. I want to do the right thing. But then we see that human values, they change as we evolve. So how do I handle this? How do I try to be a good spiritist, a good Christian, follow the laws and not offend anybody? And here's where we get the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And that goes back to that awakening of consciousness on how do I respond to that person who is different from me? How do I respond to that person who I believe has opinions that are offensive to me or that I feel like threatened my identity? There is no identity other of we are all children of the same God. We are all in different paths and different places in our life. But it makes a further point. The true measure of justice is, in fact, wanting for others what you would want for yourself. Merely wanting for yourself what you would want for others is not exactly the same thing. And I think that's where we fail. Because it's truly about putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes and not them into our shoes. And I think once we learn to do a little more of this and look at our imperfections, not as things to be embarrassed or ashamed, but as a stepping stone to a better version of myself, not for others, but for me, then we're going to become better spiritists and better Christians. Spiritist attributes are proportional to their progress, their degree of enlightenment, their capabilities, their experience, and the degree of trust they deserve from the Supreme Lord. There are no privileges or favors that do not derive from their own merit. Everything is measured and weighted on the scales of absolute justice. So when we find ourselves feeling victims of some sort, or suppressed in some way, or attacked in some form, let's go back to this. And if we are in a situation, even if it is a suppression of opinion, or be what it may be, it's because he believes you ready to face that challenge, overcome it by becoming a better person. And to end it, there's a little story that says that there was this child, when he was little, this man, that he used to be playing on the carpet as his mom would be sewing. She had an embroidery board, and he would always be on the floor, she's sitting on that sofa doing her sewing. And he would look up and see all those dark threads, and it was everything messy and disorganized. And he'd be like, Mom, what are you doing? She's like, I'm sewing. He's like, but it's all like messy and all these dark colors and all these things. It doesn't make any sense. She's like, you know what, my son? Go play. Once I'm done, I will call you to see what I've done. And the kid went playing. And then a little while later, Mom goes, all right, my son, rise up, come to my lap, and let me show you what I've made. And that child turns the embroidery board, and he's awed when he sees what? This beautiful flower and this beautiful sunset image. And he goes, oh my God, I had no idea you were making something so beautiful. And she's like, yes, when you look at it from this perspective, you can now make sense of what I was using with those threads. And he says that many times in his life, he would grow up and he would say, When he's facing challenges and difficulties, he will look up to God and say, God, what is going on? What are you doing? Everything looks so dark, so messy, so confusing. I don't understand. And God will look down from where he's standing and he says, my son, do your work and let me do mine, because I'm here embroidering your life. And one day you too shall rise and sit by my lap and see the beauty of which I've made, with the threads, the lines, and everything that looked messy, this beautiful pattern of an evolved and happy son of mine. So let us all remember, life looks messy. It looks dark and confusing, but God has a plan, and that plan is beautiful. And when we awaken in fullness our consciousness, when we understand our purpose as eternal being, not as Ligia, we will see that what God has sown was a beautiful image of happiness, fraternity, and conscience of peace. May you all have a wonderful day and find that sense of awakening now, today, not as a punishment, not as a request for consequences, but as the opportunity to make yourself a better person, a happier person, and somebody aligned with God. So be it.
Wow. Thank you, Ligia. We appreciate all the beautiful words that you brought to us about the reincarnation. And how are we all doing? Good? All right. Still awake? Yes. Are you ready for more? All right. So we now turn to our discussion panel on the great spiritual transition. Humanity is living through a critical moment, one that marks a transformation into a new era of spiritual growth. It is time to awaken and to rise to a higher level of awareness. As the moderator of this panel, let me introduce you to Jana Machado. Jana Machado is a board member of the Spiritist Society Seeds of Light in Florida, where she plays an active leadership role. She also serves on the board of the Spiritist Federation of Florida and is a member of its Children and Youth Committee, supporting the spiritual education of younger generations. Welcome, Jana.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to I would like to give you a warm good morning from the Sunshine State, Florida. It's an honor to be here, not only, to share Spiritism with all of you, but with my special friends that are in the panel with me. So before, we invite our panelists to the stage, a quick reminder, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit them using the QR code on the screen. If you prefer, you can write your question on paper and handle it to the volunteer at the check-in desk. We will do our best to address as many questions as possible during today's Q&A session. Our first panelist is our friend Luiz Lima. I'm having trouble with this microphone. Luiz Lima is a dedicated researcher focused on scientific aspects of Spiritism, working to strengthen the connection between science and Spiritist teachings. A respected speaker within the Spiritist community. He regularly participates in seminars and events nationwide. Professionally, Luiz works in the field of computer networks. With you, Luiz Lima. Our next panelist is our dear Marcia Trajano. She is the president and a founding member of the Solitude Center for the Spiritual Living in Tennessee. She also co-founded the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta and served on the board of the U.S. Spiritist Federation. She currently works in the healthcare industry. And last but not least, our young Leo Haddad. Leo Haddad is a recovery advocate at Nova Recovery, a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center. Involved in Spiritist youth education from a young age, he later became an educator himself. Leo is an active participant in the Spiritist movement and is deeply committed to promoting its values. So with you all, our three panelists. And to set the tone of our conversation this morning, because our intention is to, smoothly go from one topic to another, as if we were sitting down in our living room, drinking a little coffee and eating pão de queijo. Why not? Humanity is living a unique moment in history. Never before have we had so many scientific and technological advances. Yet, never have we faced so many moral, social, and spiritual crises. Have you ever sensed that you are meant for more? Not to have more, but to be more. There is a quiet longing inside of many of us, a knowing that we are not here just to get by, to check boxes or meet expectations. We are here to grow, to evolve, to become, to shed old layers, release old fears, and rise into the fullness of who we were always meant to be. And despite today's pains and challenges, we are being invited to grow spiritually, transforming our choices and gratitudes to help build a new era, the great spiritual transition. So our first question today will be to our friend Luiz Lima. Luiz, how can you tell us about why this moment is so important and why we must expand our collective consciousness to move forward? How does the concept of planetary transition helps us understand the great spiritual transition?
Yeah, this topic, I think it was on the high by 2012 when the Mayan calendar became this thing of the moment. Nothing happened, and I think it was very poorly understood what it means. The Maya had. We're not going to talk about the Mayan calendar, in a full extent. But 1 minute crash course on a Mayan calendar. They had 8 calendars. One of them was measuring the projection of the evolution of consciousness. It was something very serious. What you see here on the screen is a visual summary of the calendar. You see 9 levels that became pyramids that they built. All Mayan pyramids have 9 levels. And the levels, as you see here on the far right of the screen, had names. And it has to do with the evolution of consciousness. So, for example, on the bottom level, which started with the Big Bang, cellular level, and then we go into mammalian, and we keep going and going. Each level has a triggering point, and the triggering point is on the far left of each rectangle. And when you get close to our days, you see it there in green, below the green, 3115 BC. That's when Egypt becomes the first nation. So you can tell just by the names on the right side that the consciousness is coming from the very bottom, cellular, to something universal. We did this, but we shouldn't have. We cannot really pinpoint days, because we thought the last day of the world was December 21st, 2012. Because how can you match calendars if they didn't have days like we do? This is not measuring astronautics and astronomics. So we had to re-engineer the calendar by considering that they said there was a comet going on, and then the astronomers have to go back in time, project back in time. This is probably year such and such, and that's how we rebuilt the calendar. So we cannot pinpoint. So when you see at the top, for example, the last layer, of consciousness, it's not really 2011. We should maybe give it a first half of the 2000s, something like that. And then you see the tendency is to make this a universal consciousness. Isn't that what Spiritism says? When Allan Kardec talks about the law of progress, it tells us, the spirits responding to his questions, tells us exactly that. It's going to converge to one thing. That one thing is the universal consciousness. And we are going through a turmoil in the world right now, everywhere, every part of the world, because of this change of consciousness. It's something very serious, very complicated, because not everybody is at the same level of evolution. So those who are higher in the level of evolution understand better than the others. And the others fight back because they don't want evolution to be at a higher level. It's very complicated. That complicates, I think, a lot of what the situation is today. But Spiritism is very clear on this. It's very clear. It's going to happen, whether you want it or not, because the planetary fluid, which is, after several modifications, comes from the universal cosmic fluid. It's held by highly evolved spirits, Jesus and they prepare that fluid to serve spirits that have to undergo trials and expiations, as we do. It's not because they don't have the ability to do better than Earth. They have the ability to create better than Earth, but somebody has to be at the Earth level. So we need to have an Earth or several Earths out there. And that's why we are at this level here. And that's what I think it is.
All right. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our friend Marcia. Marcia, can you provide how spiritual psychology complements the idea of planetary transition?
Thank you. Thank you, Jana. This is such a good question. And want to just say thanks, everyone, for being here. And we start with Mayan calendar, planetary transition, very, very, cosmic, if you think about it. Let's dive into the self, the human being. And from that, we have to reference our dear Joanna De Angelis with spiritual psychology, but also referencing Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, who we see a very tight connection in the literature by Joanna De Angelis. But what I wanted to bring here is the concept of the archetype, so psychology, and of the apocalypse. And I know whenever we talk about this, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I maybe think that in all of your minds as well, is what are you talking about? Luiz said it was going to be okay. Ligia said it's going to be okay. Yuri said it's going to be okay. And you're talking about apocalypse. Are we talking about a sense of catastrophe or the end of it all? And we need to go back to the idea of what does it mean, apocalypse? It's from a Greek etymology. It just means reveal what was once hidden. And I love that, because if you think about the book of Revelations with St. John, that's exactly what he says, right? We read the end of the world, but he's only talking about that revelation. So when we pop on into the idea then of, okay, apocalypse, we're going to come to terms with this revelation of what is our real truth. But what about archetype? Can you, Marcia, this is me asking myself, think about what is it? And I would like for all of us to, for just 10 seconds, to close your eyes perhaps and think about, when I say apocalypse, what image comes to mind? Right? And this is very interesting because that notion of apocalypse ranges from, I don't know, religious, cultural, spiritual, and even a very personal level. So many different of imageries from a religious perspective, as I reference, and it's beyond John. We have an idea of end of it all, of punishment, of judgment. When we talk about cultural aspects, we're now talking, and I have to say it for whoever saw Wednesday, right? The zombies come to mind, and but also the notion that technological advances that like the Y2K or the 25 years ago, or the Mayan calendar 2012 a scare that so many of us were there, but from a technology, we're also discussing perhaps the fears that we're all facing with, for example, artificial intelligence, right? So it keeps going culturally speaking, and it also bridges to some things that have been talked about already here, which is this cultural turmoil, the very divided place that we live today, the trauma that is being seen politically, geographically, etc., catastrophic climate issues, and so you can see that is culturally how we understand perhaps apocalypse. But if we move down to your question, what about from a psychology perspective? And it really references that anxiety, that existential anxiety that we're all suffering. We, as a human race, right? And at a personal level, it just really means all the issues, our deep, darkest fears that we're going through right now. And we all sum it up. What comes to my mind when we talk about apocalypse? But I start to talk about the archetype of apocalypse, right? So if we put it all together, I wanted to bring the notion, and this is a symbolic sequence brought to us by Carl Gustav Jung. That symbolic sequence comes, number one, we're talking about revelation. Number two, we're now talking about judgment. Number three, destruction. And number four, new birth. So real quickly, because I can see I only have a few more minutes here, Jana, but when we reference this idea of the symbolic sequence within the idea of the archetype of apocalypse, let's think 200 years ago to now. So now we're talking, I think Yuri did such a good job, and Ligia, on referencing Kardec and the birth of Spiritism. But let's think the entire 100 years, 1800s, 1900s, what happened? From a revelation perspective, a lot happened. There was this outburst of information, new scientific fields, even sociology, psychology, among much, much more that came to our awareness, our consciousness. That's revelation, right? The second part in that symbolic sequence is really all about judgment. And when we talk about judgment, we're really referencing the fact that at some point after this 200 years, or within those 200 years period, as an example, we had to judge those old theories, old institutions, old ways of working or living no longer applied. They became obsolete. So we judged them so that we could be ready for the new era. So revelation, judgment, and now the difficult words, right? Destruction. And the destruction is just that old institutions being destroyed. We can all think very easily when we talk about technology, right? How some technological apparatus from a rotary phone. Yes, such thing existed, folks, to many others where they no longer apply. So it is futile for us to start to work in this nostalgic view of we have to keep on doing and believing what we did 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. And I'm talking right now, we are suffering because it's no longer 200 years. It's really yesterday, right? Things are going so fast. And finally, the fourth in the sequence, it's really the new birth, which is this new sense of a new beginning. Do I have a minute to finish? 1 minute,
A very
okay.
short minute.
I'm sorry? A short
very
minute.
short minute.
So we talk about, again, really broad view of the word from this apocalyptic idea, but from us, inner, right? This is what's important. And then there is this really beautiful marriage between Jung and Joanna in applying that symbolic sequence. So if you think about that revelation, and I'm going to move away the judgment, but destruction from the revelation, it's really what Joanna calls the inner crisis, right? And she calls this the beautiful invitation from God to think about it. But how does it express in ourselves? It's usually a sense of depression, of anxiety. Something is wrong. Something is being revealed psychologically, and I cannot touch upon it, but that's how it's been expressed to myself. Number two, the second part, which is real, the destruction proper, which is this idea of the dissolution of our ego. I think it was Yuri who mentioned the evil twins, right? So now we're talking about selfishness as demonstrated from those inflated egoic constructs. And when we go through that dissolution, which Joanna D'Angelo calls this, I love it, this necessary dissolution of this the false, sorry, the necessary dissolution of the false self, which is the idea of the ego trying to be the self, that close to God, that divine, that imago Dei, as Jung mentions. So finally, we come to the new birth, right? The revelation proper, the apocalypse, which is once we go through those, sense of despair, distress, depression, to revealing that all those masks and everything that we hold dear to us are going to be destroyed, we're now ready to be in the path of individuation, using Jung's vocabulary. We are in the path using now Joanna D'Angelo's vocabulary to invite God, the divine essence within. And that's, folks, is the new era and how we become ready for this expanded consciousness. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that we have explored the symbolic and psychological meaning of the apocalypse, I'd like to invite Leo into the conversation. Leo, in today's world, what are some modern examples of how the idea of apocalypse manifests? And how can these challenges invite us to honor the cycles of life?
I think it's interesting. There's like the more societal like perspective, and there's like the more personal perspective. So in society, I think we see people talking about AI a lot, about how that's going to be apocalyptic. And I think it's interesting because we can look at AI in that way. But I think that a lot of what we do is maybe project things externally because we have anxieties internally, like a lot of what Marcia was mentioning. Sorry about that. So yeah, I think that societally we're always like looking for the end of the world, like starting from way back in Mayan calendar and all these examples. And ultimately, we are seeing a transformation in our world, right? From the planet of provas e expiações to a planet of regeneration. But ultimately, the question is going to come down to what is our role in the transformation, right? Because the world is only made up of us, right? So what is our role? Are we going to go into the world of regeneration, advance, or are we going to, stick behind? I don't know what that looks like, but we definitely want to be part of the group that's moving forward. So I guess I could bring a little bit of my own life into this conversation, because I think that a lot of people nowadays, especially my age, honestly, any age, the longer time goes on, the more I'm just like, you can have a crisis at whatever age, it doesn't matter. But everyone is always talking about how the youth is lost and all these things, and that's probably true as well. But in my own life, yeah, I was definitely lost for quite a while. I was brought up in Spiritism, but as I grew up a little bit, high school, college stuff came around, I kind of lost myself. And obviously college is where you can definitely distance yourself, because you're usually far from home, and you got new friends, you got everything, you got parties, you got a bunch of stuff going on. So that's basically what happened. And after fighting anxiety, depression, a lot of just difficult things, I came back to Spiritism and to Christ, those two things together, which are so powerful. And I don't know why, but something just came to my mind, which was when Emmanuel told Chico Xavier, he said, if you have to choose, then take Christ and take Spiritism and leave me behind, essentially. If Emmanuel said, if I ever make a mistake, and that's coming from Emmanuel, who's, levels above us. So, I think that we all see in our personal lives the opportunity for transformation, sometimes more dramatically and sometimes, more slowly. But in times of crisis, we definitely see these opportunities, these invitations, as you said, to awaken our consciousness. And if anybody's going through any difficulty, I think it was Ligia, the speaker before, who talked about how when we're just like, what's going on? Like, we don't see God's plan. It's like, trust God's plan. And it's always an invitation to go back to the virtues, go back to Christ, go back to, love thy neighbor. Because once you align yourself in that path, like, things become a lot more clear, and that's progress. And unfortunately, we need like that cattle prod, like it was mentioned earlier, so that we can, move along, because we're just naturally lazy, myself included. But yeah, I think the world is definitely going through a transition, and apocalypse is on people's minds, because you just look around and you think, what's going on? Where's the order? There's a lot of chaos going on. But definitely, look to your own life and look to your own struggles, and know that the reason you're struggling is because you're moving forward, because God is inviting you, and because you're going to be able to overcome it and be a part of the world of regeneration. So, yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You see, that's why we do a mix of, generations in this panel. We have different perspectives. Now, Luiz, many of us carry deep fears about death, about loss, or even about collapse of the world around us. From your perspective in drawing on Spiritist teachings, how can we understand these fears, especially the fear of death? Believe me, Spiritists fear death, and a lot, in the light of planetary transition and our return to the spiritual home.
Yeah, we tend to bring this subject within ourselves, but at the material level. When we do this, it means we are not really, our level of consciousness, our level of evolution is not too high, and it isn't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So for the level that we are, everything is still very material. Yuri mentioned that. There is a tremendous predominance of evil over good at our stage. when we get to the next stage, there's going to be predominance of good over evil, and things are going to be different. That would be the next level of consciousness, which we are going to transition from trials and expiations that we are at today to regenerative worlds. And that's what on the first, when I showed you the calendar doesn't say end of the world. It says the end of that cycle of consciousness. And then we go to the next one, meaning that ends trials and expiations. And now we're going to go to regeneration, which is the next level up. So each one of us is at a different stage, but we are all going to be at the same stage at one point. But because some of us are at a lower level of evolution, so evil is very predominant on several people on the planet, these people are going to have a hard time following along. The ones where good is already a reality, even if it's fragmented, these people or these spirits are going to have a much easier, smooth transition. We cannot stop the transition because we cannot change the planetary fluid. We can use it. We cannot change it. We didn't make it. It was made by Jesus and company. It would be, too much arrogance of our part trying to do something like he did at this point. One day we're going to create planets. It's going to be good. For now, no, we can't. So the best we can do is, like Leo was saying, is to work on ourselves, our personal struggles. If we need to go higher, we need to climb. In order to climb, we need stepping stones. We need stepping stones. The stepping stones for climbing to a different level of consciousness is challenging yourself or being challenged by circumstances of life and the things that happen here materially or spiritually. And why do it happen at the material level? Because that's how we get challenged. We can do a simple test. Just put one person here alone in this room, no cameras, no surveillance, no absolutely nothing. And just put, let's say, 1 million $100 bills in here. Depending on the person, the whole thing disappears. Other people are going to say, wow, the amount, not the amount of dollars, the number of bills is so high that if I take, 50 of these bills and take home, nobody's going to notice a difference. And some other people are going to look at it and say, oh my God, somebody lost that money. Let's find the person and give it back to that person. So these are 3 different levels of consciousness. For most of us, we are still at the bottom level. But planetary transition is what forces us to transition over, literally, to the next level of consciousness.
All right, thank you. Now going back to Leo. Building on this, what are some archetypal, I don't even know if I said it right, association with these spheres, and how are we invited, again, to honor the cycles of life?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the archetype of death and rebirth is what the planetary transition is about, right? Because we see all these images of destruction, and like Luiz said, it's not the end, it's just the end of a cycle. So yeah, and death and rebirth happens, I think, on grand scales. I mean, we always see a good example people always talk about is like forest fires and stuff, how trees and plants and stuff need to be burned down, but then the soil becomes fertile through the ashes so that something else can grow, right? So it's the same thing in our lives, right? The struggles, they purify us, and that's like the death of the old, right? Because the way that we look at the world, it's so precious to us most of the time, where we're just like, if somebody comes along, challenges our viewpoints, it's offensive and it hurts, you know what I mean? And we can't judge anybody for that because it's the way that we're about in the world, and that's how we understand the world. But unfortunately, how we understand the world is usually wrong for all of us because we're so limited. So eventually something needs to come along to sort of shake us up. So that's going to be the death of the old thing, and it's going to usher in the new, right? Yeah, of course.
So I just wanted to add a little bit, trying to show off here my spiritual psychology knowledge. I'm just kidding here. But when the question was about archetypal images, right? And Leah was spot on in terms of death and rebirth, apocalyptic archetype. But maybe what we want to do, and we're talking about cosmic fluid, but it's too out there for us to bring it in. And I just wanted to say, number one, from a psychology perspective, archetypes is part of this universal blueprint that feeds or are inherent to our collective unconscious. And when we talk about this universal blueprint, we really talk about it's in all of us. It doesn't matter if you're born in New Zealand, Brazil, the US. It really does not matter your gender, your creed, or anything. All of us have those archetypes within. And the other aspect of it is, like instincts and archetypes feed into that collective unconscious, instincts are triggered already, but the archetypes are not. They lay dormant in all of us. Why am I talking about all of this? It is because it's important that what triggers those archetypical responses are usually a crisis. And so we live in a crisis individually and universally, globally. So let's think about it. What is this crisis pushing me for my revelation, destruction, and new birth? It's the death and the birth. What is it that I'm called upon in this, era of crisis? And from that perspective, I think it's really important for us to start think and internalize the outer world and my inner world. And usually, if you don't see it from a triggers like dreams or intuition, mediumistic messages, it can be those emotions. I think Ligia talked about that emotion, how we reacted. Those are good. The stronger the reaction, emotional reaction, that means that it is something that is triggering those archetypical behavior. And in this case, this is what is calling us or waking us from our sleep, from our slumber. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have 5 minutes left. I would like to give a chance for three of you, give a very, very short closing statement so I can close with our conclusion. Luiz.
So, yeah, I'm just going to say, typically, we delegate the term planetary transition to the planet. The planet is going to change. The planet is made of matter. So, okay, that's your responsibility. You're going to change, and I'm going to see what I'm going to do. That's not. The planetary transition includes mostly us as spirits whose habitat is the earth, incarnated and discarnating spirits. So we should never delegate it, in quotes, to the planet. It's on us. It's our responsibility. And if we don't, follow along with that responsibility, we are going to go somewhere else. That's not fun.
And I just wanted to reiterate Joanna's word. This is those moments of challenges and difficulties, crisis, if you will. They're this beautiful, beautiful invitation from God, from within to our own selves. So let us accept the invitation. Thank you.
I don't have too much more to add to that, except like I said, we got to return to the spiritist and Christian virtues of love, love one another, and that's the antidote to the evil twins, as it was called, pride and selfishness. And pride and selfishness is what causes all of our troubles, our anxieties, because it's also a lack of faith in God. So there's a beautiful passage in, I think, the Gospel according to Spiritism, that, or a little sentence that said, love draws God near and hate draws it away. So if you want God near, practice love, and all of your anxieties will subside, and you'll have much more clarity because God will start to show you his plan for your life. So, thank you.
So, in conclusion, what we have heard today, the great spiritual transition, the planetary transition, and the archetype of apocalypse, is not only about destruction, but about unveiling what has been hidden, both in ourselves and in humanity. It is about cycles of death and rebirth, the fears we must face, the invitation to grow spiritually. I hope this conversation leaves us with a sense of hope and responsibility to see crises as opportunities for renewal, to honor the cycles of life, and to recognize that the expansion of consciousness is already underway. Life isn't static. Everything is constantly shifting and evolving. The question is, are you and me moving in the directions where we are meant to be? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Transformation is a gradual process that requires daily effort, and it begins only when we truly embrace the need to change. Once we commit, two key elements become essential to this journey. To explore them, please join me in welcoming Susan Simoes, who will speak on the topic Thought and Will, the power to change our lives. And remember to send the questions, okay? Susan Simoes is a spiritist worker who balanced her career as a doctor of physical therapy with family and spiritist activities. She has served on the board of the Spiritist Federation of Florida and the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Susan co-founded the Conscious Living Spiritist group in Miami and frequently speaks at the event in the U.S. and internationally. Welcome, Susan.
Susan is my name for my next incarnation. I'm going to keep it in line with Suzana. Good morning, everyone. Allow me to share with you some of my reflections and thoughts around the work of Leon Denis when he talks about thought, about will, and about transformation. The kingdom of God is within you. You live among warehouses full of wealth and die of hunger at the door. Whether we're listening to the words of Jesus or other traditions across time, the message is clear that the future of the being with its unlimited potential is contained in the seeds within us. These seeds are dormant and they're waiting for the awakened conscience to nurture them, to develop them. Similarly, the causes for our happiness are not out there in some place in the universe, but they are all within ourselves. Yet, big part of our humanity does not know these truths, and we spiritists and spiritualists are often distracted from them and very focused and absorbed on our smallness. not from a loving and constructive way, but in a critical, judgmental, and destructive path, leaving for ourselves very little space or perhaps no space for connection with the sacred that truly defines us. So I would like to propose a reflection. How much time have each one of you dedicated to thinking about these eternal truths? The kingdom of God is within you, you are God yourselves. How much time have you spent allowing these words to take root in your minds and blossom into transformation actions, and also in a transformative way to relate to your own self and to others? Jesus has repeated the message over and over in his gospel. He will say things, for instance, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, pointing out to us very clearly where we should be focusing in the direction that we should be taking. To this end, God has endowed us with two very powerful and fundamental tools, which are thought and will. So I would like to take you in a journey on these topics, focusing on the potentialities and the beauty of humanity, of our becoming, rather than focusing, as we more often do, on our limitations and our darkness. Thought. Thought is something that we know about, but we don't know about. So let's remember that thought is a creative energy. It is a transformative agent. It is a lever for our evolution. It projects into space. It ascends or descends. It communes with other minds, and after associating to other thoughts by affinity, it returns to the sender, enriched by the energies and the contents similar to those that were initially emitted, bringing to the person, to the thinker, the natural consequences of those ideas, whether these consequences will be retraction, limitations, loss of freedom, or the illumination of the soul. Thought also acts on the universal cosmic fluid, creating forms that will persist as long as the source of its creation remains activated, nurturing and sustaining the existence of these forms. But before creating anything outside of us, thought creates internally. So our pure spirit, or as the new call it, the vibratory fluidic body, is a byproduct of the universal cosmic fluid, which means that it is very sensitive and readily responds to our thoughts and to our emotions, creating images, fluidic images that stick and that constitute the intimate atmosphere of our beings, adding to each one of us either the beauty or the shadows, the healthy or the sick components to our energy fields. Our current life, as we know, is a fragment. It's just a tiny, tiny moment on the successive lives of our immortal spirits. So each one of us has a spiritual, energetic dwelling that is composed by the energies that we have built in the cross of our existences. They might be energies of brightness or mist, and these energies that we bring with us from our past experience are associated to our current thoughts and deeds, create what Emmanuel is going to call our mental dwelling. The other tool that we have, side by side with thought, is will. Now, what is will? Will is the motor, is the lever, is what propels our thoughts and ourselves forward. Will is very important. It works like a magnet. So the will to live, for example, will attract to ourselves vital resources need to sustain our existences. But will is also, according to Leon Denis, the principle of evolution. It sets our internal powers into motion, orienting them to specific goals and specific ideals. Now, thought and will are also transformative. So when we renew our thoughts and we set our will in a uniform direction, we expel, literally expel, incompatible elements to that new vibration and to those new ideas, and we will attract to ourselves similar ones, reinforcing at that moment the being's new tendencies and new desires and new ideas. Now, when thought and will are directed towards higher ideals and used wisely and persistently, it allows us to modify our nature, overcome obstacles, and ultimately gain mastery over matter. Now, when I say wisely and persistently, I don't mean that this is a uniform or linear path. You probably know that we cannot hold our will and our thoughts in the same vibratory level. So this is a process of ups and downs, and sometimes we even change the direction and take U-turns. But what is really important is that at the beginning of each day, we set to ourselves what I call our primary intent. And that intent is going to set the path. And the best picture that came to my mind, although I wish I had found something less material, is the stock market. So when you think about the stock market, you know it's going to have ups and downs, but at the end of the day, you want to see that line going up and going forward. So as long as you have the goal, as long as you have the will set in the right place, it does not matter the ups and downs because the primary intent is setting you forward. Thought and will also prepare us to new experiences, and it can actually activate the fluidic body vibrations, promoting a change in our vibratory frequency and preparing the spiritual body, the perispirit, to experience higher and new levels of emotions, sensations, and the experience of different realms of life. In the committed soul, our will operate not only when we are awakened, but also during our sleeping hours, creating, according to the need, a very strong current that gradually helps to dissolve and eliminate obstacles. Leon Denis will say, we can achieve everything and anything in the psychic domain. No force remains sterile when exercised with constancy towards a set goal. We must have, side by side with our thought and will, a system that helps us to sustain and to uphold the intent that we set in first place. So to thought and will, we have to add confidence, faith, hope, optimism. And by doing that, we create this strong foundation that helps us to sustain and to preserve over time the soul's primary thought and intent, gradually, again, removing obstacles and moving us forward. Now, thought and will not necessarily eliminate our problems and our challenges, but it will help us to build resilience. In the physical realm, we have living within us infinite small elements that we cannot destroy, but we can build the resilience and gain the strength to better resist them. In the moral realm, we may not always be able to remove the hardships, the challenges, the obstacles, but we gain the strength to endure them with joy and with the mental effort, the mental clarity that's going to help us to transform them into allies to our progress. If we just knew the extension of resources that lies within us in the forms of seeds of potential, the God that lies within us, we would be perplexed and astonished. And instead of fearing our future and think of ourselves as weak, incapable, and feeble, we would better understand our strength, the power, and the capacity that we have to shape our futures. However, we are far sometimes to truly knowing who we are, to connect with our essence, to our potentialities, and to our powers. And if we look at the society that we live in a society where our thoughts are constantly fluctuating, jumping from one subject from another, in a fervent and uncontrolled scrolling of our social medias, living in shallowness and superficiality with an immense variability that limits or allows no access to the superior spirits to guide and better inspire us. Human thought is often discordant and confused. And to make things worse, we rarely think for ourselves. We reflect the incoherent thoughts from our environment, and nowadays, the incoherence of a society that has opted for extremes and is being led by minds that have no other interest other than their own. We live in a society of followers, and we have lost the direction and the ability of self-direct or to properly identify and relate to higher level of consciousness, people that can actually properly guide us to the essential values of the immortal spirit. Very few of us know how to live from our own thoughts, to drink according to the need from the deep internal and external sources, from the greater reservoir of inspiration each one of us carry within, but most of us ignore. Our mental house is like a dwelling of many disparate forms, where rays of good and shadows of evil are mixed, giving us this sensation of perpetual chaos and much anxiety and anguish. Or perhaps it is like one of those cheap hostels on the side of the street, free and accessible to anyone who passes by and just freely comes in. We also live in a very noisy society. There is noise in the mind and too many words being said. We talk excessively. And when we talk excessively, what happens is the conversation loses meaning, purpose, becomes sterile, frivolous, ill-intended. Our thoughts become weak and the soul drained, empty, and disconnected. Leon Denis said in the 1800s, and it holds true today, we live in a time of intellectual anemia, and I would add, of disordered thinking, hence the deterioration of humanity's mental well-being. We also live in a time of contradiction, and for a long time, it will continue to be this way because what we say and what we do is different. But what we do is driven by the death impulse of our thoughts mixed with our instinctive forces and tendencies. So our doing is coming from our old thinking, our instincts, and our tendencies. But our current thoughts, the thoughts that we are feeding now, the thoughts that we are sharing here today, these thoughts are shaping and they will materialize in the near future. Spiritism offers us the tools to strengthen our thoughts and educate our will. So Leon Denis proposes 4 different mechanisms. One of us to monitor and to discipline our thoughts, giving them a noble direction and purpose. That means to watch and to scrutinize everything that we think. Where is our mind? What are we nurturing? In which place our thoughts are finding a place to stay? So what is the nature? What is the quality of what we are thinking? And one way to easily assess that is to look at what emotions these thoughts are creating inside me. Are they making me more anxious? So we need to create the discipline to observe our thoughts and to redirect them. Second, he suggests that we meditate on elevated subjects. Now realize to meditate on elevated subjects requires action because we are immersed in a wave of inferior thoughts and we are feeding this wave in this atmosphere. So one must to really seek to meditate on elevated subjects such as wisdom, duty, sacrifice, so that the being little by little becomes absorbs the quality of those new thoughts. Third, he suggests that we choose our readings very carefully and reflect and try to assimilate their essence. And he suggests that we don't need to read so much. We actually can read less, but read and meditate. Read and talk to the message. Read and let the ideas of the author to penetrate yourself. Ask yourself, what is this message telling me? What is the meaning to my life? What it adds? So read slowly. Let it sink in. Let it transform. Let it touch you. Let it move you. And then he suggests that we pray. Because prayer, he says, is the effort of the soul that seeks to connect with the truth. In a spontaneous and fervent prayer, the soul impulse is greater and it has tremendous power. What happens exactly when we pray? When we dialogue with God, a divine influx comes through us, awakening in us new senses. Prayer helps to dispel the confusions of our mind, the mist, and increases our understanding and our consciousness about life. Prayer also helps us if we are doing from our heart, and even if it's for a moment, to enter the superior realms of life and experience something very different and that awaits for all of us. And so little by little, with these small exercises, watching what we think, monitoring, discipline, reading, and activating and giving direction to our will, we develop a stronger conscience and an enlightened intelligence. And our fluidic body and our physical body, little by little, start to respond to the impulses of the mind being permeated by the reflexes of more elevated thoughts. Ultimately, we can mold the sublime conscience and manifest the dormant God that lies within each one of us. It is so important that we remember this. In the middle of all this chaos and in the focus of our smallness, we must remember that we are gods ourselves and that we have potentials within us, that we must explore, that we must seek to awaken. The work is gradual and slow, but for no other reason, God has given us time and eternity. So I ask you, what is your current goal in life? Where are you putting your energy and your time? What is important to you? Are your eyes and thoughts directed towards the goods and the success of material life? Or is your primary intent, your eyes and your soul lean direct towards the imperishable treasures of the immortal spirit? What guides you day to day, minute to minute? Now, growth calls for effort and action, and we seek to grow and to be actively involved in the illumination process. Then we have to dig in search of this inner God. There's no progress without self-observation. And like I said, we have, and especially in the spirits movement, with all the work of Joana de Angelis, we have focused our attention down into the basement seeking to enter the unconscious and subconscious mind, where there lies our wounds, our pains, our traumas, to better understand ourselves and our unfortunate behaviors. But let us not forget that side by side with all the darkness that still characterizes us, and through the darkness, there is light, there is hope. And this is something we need also to focus on. So Jesus said, you are gods, you can do everything that I have done and much more. So all potentials, all future development are contained in seeds within each one of us. And the light is right there together with the darkness. So how do we do to access these dormant treasures that we bring within ourselves and establish the kingdom of heaven? We have to direct our thoughts inwards on a daily basis. And the new will suggest that we read the hidden book that we bring within us. It's the daily exercise to opening this book, the book of our own metamorphosis. It tells us about our past, where we have been, but it tells us also about our present, and most importantly, it tells us about our future, of our becoming. It tells us one of the biggest mysteries of creation, which is the building of our own individuality to constant effort in the sovereign action of thought, unfolding the individuality according to our talents and its aptitudes. Dear friends, read every day. Take some time every day to open the book of your own transformation. Realize how much progress you have made. Realize how far you have come to this moment. Learn to take some time to read your own soul, but also to connect to the hope of your becoming and your potentials and everything that is available within you, to establish today, at this moment, a new reality. To access these hidden treasures, it's important that we associate our thoughts to God. It's important to crave God's company each and every day. And in the dialogue with God, it's necessary that we learn to listen to the universe, to listen to the voice of nature, to listen to the silent sound of the mountains or the sound of the ocean. But remember, you too are nature. And so it's important that we project our thoughts in order to talk to God, and we retract them in order to be able to listen. And remember that God is not out there. God is in you. It's in the depths of your soul, where our thoughts rarely descend due to the constant distractions of our world, but God is there, present, beneath. The image that Denis offers us is the image of the sea, often agitated in the surface, but beneath there are regions that are inaccessible by the storms. You have within yourself regions inaccessible by the storm, where you can find the time to descend, to do the inner work, and to connect to this source that is unshakable, unchangeable, and can help you to get up and to continue every single day. Often it takes the shock of trials, of desolations to make us understand the fragility of the external things, and to push us forward to study and to give us the courage to cross the darkness to find the light. The power of will is unlimited and can operate through miracles, but we must believe to access it. I would like to end by sharing with you that I am here today because Spiritism, the teachings, the exercise of thought and will without ever losing hope, the clarity of our immortality, the understanding that yes, we can do everything. There's time. Everything may not be accomplished today, but some things are not meant to be accomplished today, but they call for time. So I'm here today as a testimonial of what Spiritism and thought and will can do for oneself, because I didn't make it here last year. Although I had my ticket purchased because of challenges that we all face in life. 1 year later, these challenges remain. But I keep pressing forward because some days I'm stronger, some days I'm more frail, but the intent, the primary intent, never fades away, and I never lose sight of it. Who we are, what are we doing here? What is the role of our trials and expiations? What is our mission? And the most important thing, the foundational sentiment that we have to carry within ourselves that will help us to persist, that will give us the resilience, and will help us to reset as many times as necessary. It's faith and hope. That's what I wish for you today. Much peace.
Thank you, Suzana, for your talk and for sharing with us so many tools that we can use to keep moving forward in our lives. As Suzana joins Yuri Castro, Ligia Carvalho, and Luiz Lima in the Q&A session seating area, please join me in welcoming our moderator for the first Q&A session of the day, Marcelo Medeiros, who will be guiding us through the questions you submitted earlier this morning. Marcelo Medeiros has been an active contributor to the U.S. Spiritist movement since 2012, with a focus on media and communications. He is a committed member of the Caritas Spiritist group and coordinates Fraternity on the Streets in Atlanta, a project that supports the city's homeless community. We'd like to welcome Marcelo Medeiros.
Hey, good morning, everyone. We already got a few amount of questions here. We'll try our best to address all of them. If not possible, please apologize us in advance. And I'd like to start, let's go back to the first panel. Yuri, we have one question here. Not only one, but I'll try to start with this one here. So, Yuri, Jesus said that it would be division and violence in the times of transformation of earth. The law of destruction is necessary when love did not prevail yet. Therefore, it seems that those times came to the planet with so much turmoil and anger and destruction and suffering. How can we help to awake our conscience and others when there is so much resistance to peace and love due to division and hatred?
Thank you so much, Marcelo. Thank you for the question, whoever wrote that. It's a great point because it is part of the evolution of consciousness. And yes, the law of destruction, as it was said by the panel before here, is this renovation, this renewal. It's not the end of all and that's it. Nothing else will happen after it or exist after that, but it's this renewal that is happening. It is something that we must have in mind as, like I said in my talk, as we move forward with our days and with our lives, that this is part of a transition, as Luiz also said before. It's part of a transition that takes time. But we are impatient. We still see things with our material eyes. Therefore, we start to look at all the turmoil, the violence, the wars, and everything that's out there. And we may lose hope. We may lose faith because we don't see the full picture yet, as Ligia had that beautiful analogy at the end. We don't see the full picture yet. But these things do take time, and to answer the follow-up question that came, how can we be a part of it? What we can do, Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. That's it. Modify ourselves, modify yourself, know thyself, look inward, have the courage to do that, and to shed pride and selfishness little by little, because it is a gradual process. There are no leaps in nature. So be the change you wish to see in the world. Start with yourself, because as you do that, others around you will be positively affected. They will change themselves as well. That's it.
That's great. Thank you. And Luiz, now going back a little bit about to you for your panel. As technology and intelligence grows almost exponentially, but moral compass grows slowly, how this imbalance impacts the consciousness evolution in our planet? And will eventually consciousness evolve exponentially as well?
Yeah, progress is made of two things: moral progress and intellectual progress. And the spirits leave this very clear to us, that intellectual progress has to come first. And the reason is, it gives us a better ability, better discernment to make better choices by raising our level of intelligence ahead of the level of morality. So when we make choices, we make better choices. And that's how, we can be more successful in the journey. And I think there was a second part to the question as well.
Yeah, it is. Will eventually the consciousness evolve exponentially as well?
Yeah, so the level of consciousness has to do with the level of morality and the level of intelligence. So as we grow, conscience becomes more of an asset. We don't see consciousness today as an asset. We see as just something that's out there. We mention the word all the time. Can you imagine Jesus, for example? And his level of consciousness, his level of morality was everything, not just, oh yeah, that's right. Nothing like this. We can, Paul used to say this, Apostle Paul, he used to say, the law is not written for the just. So our level of consciousness is so low that we need laws. A lot of laws. More articles on the law, the worse it is. Can you imagine if somebody said, listen guys, let's get together here. We know Jesus is coming down. Let's put a law for when he comes down. It makes no sense. He doesn't need that. So our level of consciousness is going to improve with morality. And because everything is based on the law of justice, love, and charity, justice is at the base of everything. We cannot even understand justice yet. So anything above it becomes a challenge for us.
Thank you. Ligia, we do have some questions here about the youth and adolescents. I know that you have experienced in that, so I will ask this one for you. How can we get reluctant adolescents involved with and interested in the Spiritism when it's not something they are attracted to?
This sometimes becomes a little controversial for parents, and it has to do a lot with parenting and also with example, right? If you tell your children to eat certain things or to behave in certain manners, but you don't do it yourself, it's difficult. So if you don't have the same type of commitments, if you don't live certain those aspects within your daily lives, it's difficult to make children or teenagers motivated. It's sort of that kind of mantra, like you smile outside, but at home you're upset or you're angry or you don't talk. So you really have to embody, like I said before, I talked about Spiritism. I don't fully live it yet because I'm imperfect and I'm trying. So I think the first thing starts in the home. You imparting to your child that Spiritism is not just a religion or philosophy that you follow, but it's a means of seeing the world and making it part of everyday living. And with that, applying the gospel at home, because that way you're demonstrating to your child that you are implementing. The other thing is being aware of developmental stages. It is normal for children to test limits. It is normal for them to refuse, to not want to do certain things. And it becomes a back and forth play between you and your children. You know, what is it okay for them to refuse? What is not okay for them to refuse? I know many parents, they won't let their children not go to school. You need to get an education. So with a concept of religion is the same way. We know that children and adolescents, as bright or as mature as they are, they're still not fully able to understand the consequences and the ramification of a religious perspective in their lives until they're older. So as a parent, it is our job. As long as you live in my house, as long as you're a minor, you will follow what I believe is best. When you get older, you will have the freedom to choose. Just like us, we have free will, but our will is not 100%. God limits it based on our abilities. So the healthiest perspective is you set limits and boundaries. And one of the expectation is, as part of this family, we go to the center together, or we go to this place together, or we participate in this activity together. I don't like it. I understand. But this is what we think is best for you. When you're old enough and when you're mature, then you can make a decision. But while you're still a minor and you're still in my home, this is what we do. But you don't want to do it in a combative way. It may become combative if you have teenagers, but it's a way of implementing. It's like in your home, you have certain things, some family values that you don't let it be transgressed. And there are others, they becomes a negotiation. So I think it's about us prioritizing the meaning of Spiritism in our lives. And it's sort of like, if your child is sick, they don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to get a shot. They don't want to get medication, but you give it to them, you force it to them because you know it's the best way. So it's the same thing with children. Yes, they have free will, they have volition, they should have a say in certain things, but to a limit. And I think when it comes to being engaged is, you don't like it, you find it boring, you try to give me a hard time. That's what kids do. So expect it, be the parent. And instead of allowing that to become a point of conflict and fighting, it becomes a point, I'm your parent. This is a limit I'm setting. I would like you to comply. If you don't, there's consequences. And when you are adult, then you make your own choices. We don't let kids go without medication. We don't let kids go without food. We don't let kids go without school. Why should we let them go without Spiritism if we believe it's the best for us? So that is my recommendation. Like I said, there may be struggles, but dealing with kids always struggles in it.
Thank you, Ligia. Now, Suzana, this one is for you. Is it fair to say that will gives direction to our thoughts and their energy? And if so, how can we train our will to direct our thoughts to things that are noble and worthwhile?
How do we train them?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, you have to, there are two ways we can live our lives. We can live being pushed by the flow of life, as you think of an object that is in a river being taken by the current, right, by the external forces. Or we can seek to provide direction to where we're going, and this needs to be something that we actively choose to do. So the first thing is to choose to have the understanding and to understand that you have the power to guide your own life and to set the direction and also to set the pace. So once you are aware of that and you are committed to work with that, so you will work on having the discipline to make that a daily commitment. So for instance, every day when I wake up in the morning, I sit to have my breakfast, I open a page and I do a reading at the beginning of each day that helps me to set my mind for the beginning of that day. In the readings, I try to remember that I'm a mortal spirit that is important to bring God to every single encounter and every single moment of my daily life, no matter where I am or what I am doing. So this is an exercise. It's an exercise that I do that help me every morning to reset my mind. The morning is a great time to do that because you're just waking up, you're fresh, and a lot of times the reminiscences of what happens during your sleeping hours will still be available to you and will come up to you in a form of inspiration. So the reference is one for us, Christian and spirits, is Jesus. So we have the reference, we have the gospel, we have the north, the compass, like Yuri said, and it's a matter of, like I said, paying attention to your thoughts, making sure you have a clear goal, understanding that it's not going to be a straight path, that some days you're going to be stronger, some days you're not going to be so strong, but having that commitment to reset as many times as necessary, to get up as many times as necessary, to take as many U-turns as you think are needed to get yourself in the correct direction. So all those things, and these are just some ideas and examples, are ways in which we can put ourselves in the right direction and strengthen our will so that it can guide us to where we want to be, a place of more harmony and happiness.
Thank you. I'd like to extend this question also to Yuri, Ligia, and also Luiz, too. If you could talk a little bit about what helped you, each one of you, to awaken your conscience and go ahead and go forward.
Well, we go through different experiences in life. And I think when I first started going to a Spiritist center, I felt this, I would say, different thing about hearing somebody speak or teaching something and what's going on with my life and put them together. So that there is, my background is technical, very technical. So I was listening to things like André Luiz and Evolution into Worlds and stuff like that, which was very relatable for me. So the way this got into me is because it became relatable. What we see is a lot of people want to be in Spiritism, want to, develop their abilities by learning Spiritism, but it's not getting them, it's not getting into them. And I think it's because of that. It's not relatable to that person. You want to teach, I don't know, the Spiritism by going this way, but the person needs it to be this way. And I think it's a lot of that. Spiritism has several different front ends, if you will. A lot of people are very much philosophical, than religious, than technical or scientific. So, we need to be open for everything because one day it's going to hit us. And that's Victory Day. That's when we, say, that's it. Now this is on my path and it's going to be okay.
Although I'm much older than Leo, his experience, I think, reflects in parallel my experience, having been in the Spiritist movement in the United States since I was 13. So imagine if we struggle now, 30 plus years ago was much more difficult. And I think was the concept of finding not just hope, but explanation within the text of Spiritism that allow me to have, I guess, the strength to try to do what's right. Because when we are younger, the temptations of the world, the pressures of the world, the lack of certainty about who you want to be in the sense of identity, it's really a hardship. And by studying Spiritism and better understanding Jesus and so many other people that, we see in the movement through the literature. I mean, the literature is one of the most beautiful things. Paul of Tarsus, the book of Paul of Tarsus. There's so many beautiful things. The collection of André Luiz, they're novels, they're not study books where you have, like the questions that are presented. Those are a little more challenging. You have to really think through it in a more intellectual manner. But when you read the novels of Spiritism, it impacts you from the perspective where Suzana said that inner sense of self, that being and that potential that you have to be better. So I think it was that really giving me that strength to know I didn't have to follow the crowd. I didn't have to do certain things because the person that I need to please, you know, I wouldn't say God, but, you know, it is ultimately God, but in that stage would be Jesus. And he showed me the path, and having that trust. And that also gave me strength because the temptations are there, my deficits are there, my difficulties are there. And I was able to overcome a lot of things by rationalizing the process, but then also controlling the emotions, because the anxieties, the uncertainties, the fears were there. So there's no better therapeutic process than Spiritism philosophy that helps us to fully understand the laws of God through the teachings of Jesus and these other people. And they're so humanized, because sometimes Jesus is like so far away, we feel like I'm too far. It's too big of a leap. But when you take about all those other personas and all those different stories, they're so humanized that they could be your sibling, your brother, yourself. And he shows you, yes, you can overcome challenges and become a better person. And then it gives you purpose. Because as we know, as you grow older, sometimes our job loses meaning. Our family sometimes gets broken up. Our children grow up and no longer, I'm a mom, now I need to figure out something else to do. So our purpose in life changes. But Spiritism is a solid path that continuously gives us purpose every single day. And hopefully that can, you know, be the path for you as well.
I don't think I've ever had this question asked before, and I had to think about it when it was it for me, and I think it was 2 times. I started in Spiritism when I was 8 years old. I was seeing things, hearing things, and my mom was like, "We got to take you somewhere and understand what's going on." And that's how I started in youth groups and learning about these things. So, but even at that time, I remember when I was around 10, I had this conversation with a friend who lost his sister. And everybody was saying, "Oh, your sister, now she's in heaven, she's in heaven." And I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I'm like, is she really? Like, is there such a thing? Why? What did she do to deserve to be in heaven? Which later, reading Heaven and Hell, and you start to understand about divine justice, about the reincarnation of the soul and the different passages in the body, you start to realize that there's nothing without purpose. And I think the awakening sort of the consciousness for me came when I was a child, and then growing into an adult and seeing and studying even more, but feeling that there was this pull, there was something was pulling me to continue to study, to give talks, to just express and take Spiritism from the love I have for it from the inside to the outside through, you know, preaching these things, but also, like Ligia said, becoming these things we're preaching. Because I can't come here and say, let's forgive, let's be kind to one another, and I go outside, I bump into it, and don't even say I'm sorry. So it's sort of in my head, I'm always like, I'm saying these things, I got to do these things, I got to do these things. So that's the awakening and the laws of God in our consciousness. And I think that's how, at least for me, it's what propels me to follow them.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, so we do have some more questions here. We will forward the questions to the speakers. Thank you so much again, Suzana Simoes, Yuri Castro, Ligia Carvalho, and Luiz Lima.
Thank you, everyone. It's a very special moment. It's just around the corner there. It's almost lunchtime. So before we go to lunch, we have some advice to do here, some message or some instructions. So please, parents, please pick up your children. Don't forget them there. Please pick up your children now and remember to check them back in their classroom before the next session after lunch, okay? And during lunch, we'll be sharing some important updates about the Spiritist movement in US in a special slideshow, including events, Spiritism apps, audiobooks, youth education resources, weekly lives, and other ongoing programs.
During lunch hour, feel free to enjoy the buffet and buy some Spiritist books. Schedule a fraternal conversation if you feel it can be helpful to you, and also catch up with friends. And lunch will be served in the room to my right. And please return to the auditorium a few minutes before 1 p.m. And make sure to drop your children back off at their classrooms. Our next panel will start sharply at 1 p.m. Don't miss it. And enjoy your lunch. We'll see you at around 1 p.m. Thank you. Vou pegar um telefone.